The Redmi Note 7 just released here from Xiaomi, and it has some unbelievable specs, but you need to keep watching because there is one thing that has got a lot of people talking. Okay, let's talk about the Redmi Note 7. Xiaomi have just released the Redmi Note 7. This has some incredible features. On paper, people are excited and some people are a little bit confused. Why are they confused? Let's talk about that in a second, but let's first just talk about the price of this new Redmi Note 7. Starting off at 999 yuan here in China. That is around about $150 for what looks to be on paper an incredible phone. When you look at the spec sheet on this thing, you wonder how they can sell it for 150 bucks. So let's start off with that screen. It's a 6.3 inch display there on the front with what they call a water drop notch to house that front facing selfie camera. What do you guys think about this notch here? I have to say, looking at these renders, it looks really good. It's a small little, as they call it, water drop notch just housing that front facing camera. As you can see here on the top, the bezels are pretty small. I have to say though, looking even at these renders, I think that bottom bezel is going to be pretty large. It's an LCD screen, not AMOLED, but it looks to be a really decent screen. I'm a little worried, maybe that bottom bezel is a little large, but I like the top bezel. I like the water drop, as they're calling it. I've seen plenty of this type of phone with this 6.5 inch screen, and those bottom bezels don't really cause too much of an issue. This picture here, I think it makes the phone look really great. You can see that really nice water drop notch in the middle. It's not taking up too much of the screen. Bezels, not the smallest bezels in the whole world, but certainly in this price bracket, it's giving you a really good screen to body ratio. Another point about the screen that Xiaomi are really pushing this year in the Redmi Note 7 is the glass on the front. So they're saying this is 5th generation Gorilla Glass. As you can see, they're going to great lengths to show us just how robust this thing is. I'm not sure how often you get women in heels stamping all over your phone, but I guess it's definitely a good thing that they've got the Gorilla Glass 5 in this one. Anyway, enough about the screen. Let's get on to this, what I believe to be the main feature, the main selling point of this phone, but it has courted some controversy. I'm talking about that back camera, 48 megapixel back camera, an incredible stat. It's going to get a lot of people's attention. How can you put 48 megapixel camera in a device priced at around 150 US dollars equivalent? Xiaomi is saying you can get some incredibly sharp images out of this thing. You can see here that they're comparing it to a 12 megapixel camera compared to what the Redmi Note 7 would have, 48 megapixels. They're saying you can get extremely clear pictures out of this. So if we're thinking about the V20 from Honor or the Nova 4 from Huawei just launched, are we getting a great deal? Are we getting a great camera for less money? Is this the deal of 2019? It would be incredible if we did. However, people are saying that because the Snapdragon 660 is in this thing, it simply can't process 48 megapixel images. So what's going on here? According to one source, the 48 megapixel rear camera on the Redmi Note 7 looks marvelous, but the Snapdragon just can't power a lens more than 25 megapixels. So what's going on here? How are Redmi doing it? Are they marketing something to us that they can't give us? Well, apparently they're using the Samsung GM1 sensor, which can deliver 12 megapixel images. It uses something called quad pixels, which can combine to collect more light and then give you those 48 megapixel shots. So we're not getting the same Sony sensor that we're getting on the new V20 or the Honor 4, but we'll have to wait and see when we get hands-on with this thing and we test out this camera. We'll have to see just how good that camera is. I was really impressed by that stat, 48 megapixel camera on a $150 phone. But it's not to say that that camera still isn't great. We'll have to wait till we get hands-on, and I can't wait till I get that in my hands and I just see how good that camera really is. Moving on to the insides, as I said already, it comes with a Snapdragon 660, the Adreno 512 GPU. I think this thing is plenty powerful considering the price of this phone. This is why so many people are getting excited about the Note 7. It's the price and the specs combined. This is pretty much bordering on a mid-range phone for budget phone pricing. They're putting a 4000 milliamp hour battery in this thing. Plenty enough for way over a day's usage, unless you're really heavy gaming. USB-C as well on the bottom. It's about time that the budget phone category gets USB-C ports. I think the mini USB should be completely abandoned. There's no reason why budget phones can't give us USB-C. I'm really glad that we're seeing USB-C on a phone of this price. Now the base model has 3 gigs of RAM, 32 gigabytes of storage. That's for your 999 RMB here in China, roughly about $150. If you want to start adding RAM and storage to this thing, it's going to start to creep up into maybe the mid-range sort of pricing. You can get it with 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage, up to 6 gigs of RAM, still with 65 gigabytes of storage. That is going to push that price up well into mid-range pricing, and then it starts to come into a bit of competition with maybe some phones from Honor and from Huawei. If you want to do some gaming on this thing and you think you're a power user, you're going to do a lot of multitasking, then I would maybe recommend just trying to get maybe 4 or 6 gigabytes. If you think you're just going to use this phone messaging, emailing, you're not too much of a power user, I think 3 gigabytes you're going to be fine, and that's when you can get that great deal, $150. The camera on the front there, as I said before, it's just housed in that really good looking, in my opinion, water drop notch, as they call it. It's a 13 megapixel selfie camera. They say it has AI technology. What does that actually mean? I think they're just using certain different exposures, maybe a bit of HDR, to make the pictures just look that little bit better. Now the back camera, it's a dual camera actually, has electronic image stabilization. There's no optical image stabilization in this one, but that front camera doesn't have any stabilization whatsoever. The back camera supports slow motion up to 120 frames per second. It's a great feature to have on what is a budget smartphone. Quick charge on the battery. This is Xiaomi's version of quick charge. We're yet to see how this one, the Note 7, stacks up against some other phones in the same price bracket. We'll have to wait for some battery comparisons, but it's a really decent set of stats. You get your USB-C and you get your quick charging all in this phone. January 15th launch day here in China. As soon as this one comes out in the shops, I'm going to get it in my hands. We'll do a hands-on test, hands-on impressions video, so you guys can see exactly what this thing looks like. I really want to see what this camera is like. 48 megapixel camera. It's a really great headline, but just how good is it? We're yet to see. All in all, the design of this thing, the Gorilla Glass 5, dual camera on the back, small bezels, water drop notch, big battery there, 4000 milliamp hours, Snapdragon 660 with something that Redmi are calling a full blood version. Maybe they've clocked it a little bit higher, but Redmi seem to really be pushing the stats. A budget phone with what looks like mid-tier specs, but we need to find out if that camera is as good as they say it is. Keep tuned for that video. As soon as I can get one in my hands, I'll be posting that impressions video. What do you guys think of the design? What do you guys think of the specs? Are you looking to buy one of these, or are you gonna wait for maybe the M10 from Samsung to see how that one is? 2019 has definitely started with some interesting phones in the budget category.